Okay, here we go. This is going to be, I'll look at it as a bit of a training exercise about something that's quite common in, let's call it the freedom movement. I don't have a better word for it right now, just to make it easy to identify which place to look, about how people still believe that they can actually conduct themselves in a way that's going to actually benefit them on some level. So I'm going to play it, I'm going to be stopping it throughout, so if you're one of those people who likes to see something carry through without any breaks, this is going to be quite agonizing for you. But if you're here to sort of get some understanding about what's really happening here and why things went the way they did, then it's quite imperative that I stop it at certain points. So here I go, I'm going to start playing it.
State your name.
Yeah, I'll start from the beginning. How about we do that?
Yes, let's do that.
All right. Senior Constable Roncardo, Wollongong Highway Patrol.
Thank you.
I'm required by law to let you know I'm wearing a body-worn video camera that's recording, and there's cameras in the Highway Patrol car that are recording.
That's
as well.
fine, no dramas at all.
All right, do you agree that I've directed you into the RBT site for the purposes of random testing?
I agree, you pulled me in for that, yeah.
Okay, first thing, so their whole system is to get you to answer questions. That's the whole system they run from. So first trap is obviously start answering the questions where you haven't even established they have authority at all at any point, right? The first thing you need to do is establish their authority, why they're even supposed to be asking you any questions, because they're meant to be public servants. Public servants are meant to be offering a service. Now, if you looked up the term service, being pulled over and told what to do to be and forced to answer questions does not come under any definition of service. Right, so there's the first thing that got missed right there. And from this point onwards, everything goes south, as you'll see.
Yeah.
Do you agree that I've asked you to produce your driver's licence?
Yes, and do you agree that I've said to you that is a commercial contract to the Roads and Maritime Services, and that is a separate corporation to the New South Wales Police Force, which is a different ABN, so you didn't have the consent by me, I am the beneficiary and the executor of that legal fiction name. You didn't have the consent to even look up the details of that commercial contract to the RMS, because you're a separate corporation.
All right. I agree you said something similar to that, not quite as long as that, much shorter.
I do study law.
Yeah.
All right, so a fair bit to unpack here. I'll try and make it as quick as I can. So what's he done? He's gone and spoken about something that's a mental construct that a pack of criminals created to benefit their own cult, right? That's pretty much what he's trying to do. He's trying to use a system that's going to make him sound like he's deluded to anyone who knows nothing about it. Now these lower end foot patrol, what would you call them? Thugs, I don't know, paid thugs. They have no clues about this, right? And you'll see that later. He's like totally clueless. Then this is just gobbledygook, right? He has no idea. He just knows he's got to get through what his spiel is. So it's just entertaining him. The guy who's actually recording is being entertained by this paid thug. And so he's like, yeah, okay, we'll just do the niceties just to make it look like, whatever you've got to say matters. But he's not listening, you can see. He's like totally tuned out, To him, he's just hearing sovereign citizen talk, right? Because there's nothing bound in reality that anyone else can verify here, right? This requires a very high degree of proof, what this guy's saying, that cannot be verified in the moment. It's just not possible, right? So these guys don't give a stuff what you say. You just sound like an idiot to them. And so, like you've got a serious mental illness. And so you'll see how he treats him, right? From this point onwards, he's just like, oh, okay, he's one of these guys. But I'll just carry on doing what I've been trained to do, because there's no threat here. And so when he actually mentions that thing about the contract and so forth, right? That's all that straw man stuff. No one's really ever had any serious success with that. Maybe in some private way, but you show me someone who's actually had success. When I say success, I mean the whole system comes crumbling down. Not bamboozle them so they just walk away and they don't know what's just happened. That's not success, right? Because then you're pulling out all these folders and stuff like that. They're just like, I don't know what to do with this. But really show on a consistent level how this actually tears down a monolith. It's never been done, right? So let's listen on.
In the end, so you're driving a motor vehicle and the state of New South Wales...
No, I'm not driving a motor vehicle, I'm travelling.
You're required to produce carry and produce a driver's licence when police ask.
That'd be if you're conducting commerce, and I'm not conducting commerce, I'm actually travelling.
Do you agree that I then gave you a warning that if you didn't produce that driver's licence that you would be arrested?
Oh, I agree you gave me that warning, but I find you have no jurisdiction as the state of New South Wales is registered to Washington DC under the... listen to me, please. I'm going to continue. State of New South Wales is registered to Washington DC on the Security Exchange Commission 0000071545, which means that you now require an ASIC 480 memorandum, ASIC 402, ASIC 403, ASIC 404 and ASIC 405 to be able to conduct business lawfully in this country.
Yeah, you see how attentive this guy was? The thug has no idea what the hell's just happening. He's just like, oh, far out. Seriously? I've got to go and do this again? You know, this is agonizing. But anyway, let me just go through the steps, right? And so this guy that's recording this, right, he's like swallowed this backwards, right? He knows how to spit it out. But what's the point of swallowing something that doesn't exist, that requires a high degree of proof, right, that you cannot verify in the moment? What's that going to serve you, right? Is it really working? Like, what if your intention is to get this guy to go away? Is it working? You know, and people aren't learning from that. They're still doing it. This is the definition of mental illness, right? If you keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, that's how mental illness is defined. Yet they haven't learned. You know, yet they still think, no, I've got to keep at it. Eventually it'll get somewhere. And it never does, as you'll see.
Again, I've mentioned to you before, I don't know what you're talking about.
I do, because I'll
So he just said, I don't know what you're talking about. So he's just proving it to him, right? But he's going to keep insisting. He's like, well, I know this is true. Doesn't matter that he doesn't. The difference is, right, there's an imbalance of power here. One of them has an entire monolith that stands behind him. This guy that's got the camera has nothing. He's got himself. You know, bit of an imbalance there, right? So that alone, doesn't matter if you're telling the truth or not, is a huge disadvantage if you're the one who's trying to get someone else to do what you want when you don't have any leverage whatsoever, right? So he hasn't understood that. Right, so that's because he's come into it wedded to the outcome. You know, like he has to show that this thing that he's invested his time, energy, and labor, this whole mental construct that doesn't exist in reality, that it has power, right? So that's the investment. As soon as you invest in that, that's when you start needing to justify how much you know. As he said, this is the second time he said, I study law, right? No, he doesn't. You don't study law. Law is something you live and experience. You cannot study it other than to, learn from it as you experience it. What he's studying is a mental construct, which is called law, which is all these illegitimate systems that were created, as a way for these criminals to get away with committing crimes, right? That's what he studied. That's not law.
Study law.
Yep. In the end, I'm dealing with the road rules in terms of New South Wales, the road legislation.
Well, I just told you, the state of New South Wales is registered to Washington DC without the people's consent of this country.
So this is your last one.
So there he goes. He's like, okay, tell your story walking, honey. Like, why he keeps repeating the same stuff? It means nothing. Yet he's still doing it, and so he's not figuring this out. It's like, actually, this isn't actually serving what I'm trying to do here. You know, maybe it's not really going to work out if I just keep pursuing the same thing.
I don't need to. No, I don't, sir. You know. Do you not? Do not come in my private property, sir. Do not enter my private property. You are trespassing on my private property. You do not have consent.
As you can see now, there's going to be an attempt to smash the window. My guess is he was unsuccessful because he wasn't in a position where he could pull it from with some leverage. He was lower because it's a truck, so he didn't have the leverage to drag it out. So you're going to see this in a second.
To enter my property. This is my private property. Sorry, you do not have consent. You don't have consent.
So he gave it a good shot, right? But he just doesn't have the leverage because he's lower. So in their minds, they're just like, I'm justified to do this. I can do whatever I need to get this guy under arrest, right? That's what they're thinking, right? So he was unsuccessful, as you can see.
Break my window. If you break my window, no, you are trespassing against my property, sir. You do not have consent.
Now, if he had his mates here, the whole thing would have changed, right? But he was only here by himself, so therefore he had to try another tactic.
You now placing you under penalty of perjury, you must provide the material evidence that you are not a business.
See what I mean? Now this guy's going to start rattling off a whole bunch of stuff that means nothing. Watch how much of an impact it has.
Now placing you under penalty of perjury, you must provide the material evidence that you are not a business. Right now. You must provide the material evidence that you're not a business.
So you see what's happening? Just repeating something that doesn't mean anything. Yet they still think that, if I just repeat it, it'll matter this time, right? This is the mental illness.
You're under penalty of perjury now, I remind you, officer.
That's the third time, right?
I know the law.
Now that's the third time he said about the law?
Very well. I study contract law. All right? I know exactly what goes on here.
So now he's trying to make himself an authority about what's truly happening here. Well, this guy has already told him, I have no idea what you're talking about. All I do is I follow the policy and procedure that I've been trained in. That's as far as I need to know. That's what he's told him. And everything he's talking about is just totally irrelevant. Like, it means nothing. Yet, when you're wedded to the outcome that you must get an outcome, right, that what it is that you want to get out of this must happen, you pull out all kinds of mental stuff, right? You're going to see all different versions of him trying to give himself some kind of credibility and legitimacy, the one who's holding the camera on me.
You do not have jurisdiction over me. I am under the jurisdiction, and within the jurisdiction, and here we go, here's my identification, of the Global Federal Postal Courts.
You see, now this is something like, who on earth's going to know anything about this unless you've gone and studied something, which most people, if they do put the study in, they've had to pay for it, right? So when you pay for something, you're invested in making sure that that actually comes into reality. That's one of the biggest mistakes. If you think you can pay for your freedom, you've already lost. There's no such thing as that. You can't pay for truth. That's not something that can be exist. It just can't, because truth is discoverable, so it can't be sold, right? What he's learning is someone else's particular private prejudices that they've sold and packaged in a way that seduced all these people who reckon that they can win their freedom right now in a moment where the entire population is mentally enslaved, right? Don't understand the basic principle that if one is enslaved, all are enslaved. They can't figure that out. They think they can actually bypass it for some reason. And that's why you're seeing this escalate.
That's a legal fiction name, that is not I. Legal fiction name, that's not I. You are committing personage right now by trying to identify me as a legal fiction name. You do not have the right to do so. That is personage.
Now, is this really bothering this thug, right? Is he changing anything he's doing? No, he's just carrying on doing his job. Like, you can just say whatever he likes right now. The moment that he allowed him to carry on asking the questions without getting the verification that they actually have authority, and there's a specific way that's done, it's all downhill, like I said. And then you watch what happens. He just comes out with more and more stuff now, the guy holding the camera.
Personage is a crime. You're supposed to be upholding the law, sir. I am under global federal jurisdiction. Do you want to see my identification tag?
Now, think of how absurd that is, right? That now there's all of a sudden something called global federal jurisdiction. Like, tell me that's not an invention. Like, where does that exist in nature? You're either a man or you're not. Now, if you're a man, you don't need anything that says that you're, something under something jurisdiction. That's all invented, right? But yet they keep falling for these people. They think that that's going to grant them some kind of immunity. It doesn't, and this is where it gets really comical.
You do not have jurisdiction over me. Real federal, not corporate. I am a student of Mark Kishon Christopher.
There you go, he's just said it, right? He's just said who he's paid all this money to, right? So this guy is running these scams, right? He's done a wonderful job on most people who love self-indulgence, and they can't recognize that they want to get a win. They're so invested in a win, and they want to be like some kind of martyr to people, right? This is the kind of stuff that's going to happen if you're going in with that mentality right here.
The Global Chief Postal Court Judge. Do you still wish to try to contract with me, sir? Do you believe you are higher jurisdiction than Mark Kishon Christopher?
Look at that, right? So here it is. This is the whole superior-inferior dynamic now coming out again. If we're all equals, right? We're all equal under the law. Now, how all of a sudden can just one random individual who's gone and made up a bunch of stuff, right? Now, how can they have like jurisdiction, whatever the hell that means? I mean, jurisdiction, if you really understand it, it just means to create a right, by inventing it in your mind and getting others to believe it. So that's basically what he said. Like, that you think you're better than someone else who made up this structure. You're just going to get laughed at. They're just going to think, oh, he's another sovereign citizen, right? That's a setup. It's a deliberate setup to trap people who easily self-indulge, right? And there's so many people who keep falling for this trap, and they believe that there's still something waiting for them there that they're going to be able to win. It's just a matter of persistence. but yet there's no evidence that it does anything. Now you're going to listen to more of the things he says.
Global Chief Postal Court Judge. The real federal. Commonwealth of Australia is registered to Washington DC on the Security Exchange Commission 0000805157. That is fraud, that is treason, that is without the people's consent. Sir, you are sitting in a position of treason right now. I will take this to the courts. I've already beaten the Chief Magistrate in the court in Sydney.
So if his goal was to actually go, you know what, I'm not going to be able to convince this guy. This guy's too dense. He doesn't understand how this really works. So why don't I just take this one on the chin and I'll just go fight it later, like he just said now. He reckons he's already beaten the Chief Magistrate. So then if he knows that that's how it goes, why even push it right now, right? Why even bother? Yet he's just attached to the outcome. Like he thinks he can still make this stop, right? That's the biggest disaster, because then he's like, you don't know how important I am. Do you know how much I know? This is all that sort of stuff coming out now.
And you will be next on the litigation. You'll be held liable in the private capacity. Do you understand? In the private capacity, you will be held liable. Your badge is your indemnity number. Your corporation does not cover you for your own conduct. Do you understand? So you do not have jurisdiction over me. I am global federal jurisdiction. And you will be receiving a judicial notice from me. Do you understand? Corporation cannot make laws for the living, nor can a corporation enforce laws on the living. Sir, I run a channel that reaches over 1.4 million people.
There we go. There's the best name drop of ever. Look, don't you know how important I am? Don't you know how much reach I have? Now, you could have, all 8 billion on your channel, but if they're all mentally enslaved, it's going to mean nothing. That's the thing. The majority of the people who believe themselves to be patriots, etc., do not understand principle. If they did, none of this would have ever happened, but they don't. And so you can have as many of them viewing as you like, thinking that this has got some value, and then they're just straight back into slavery, right? They don't know how to call out the lie based on that which is self-evident, which everybody can see, even the ones that we call sheeple, right? That there is no way they can't understand these basic principles. And if you don't start there and stay there, everything else falls into the ocean, as you can see is happening right now.
Weekly. And I will make you famous.
See what I mean? More threats. It's just the same old tactic. He's using the same tactics of some version of coercion to try and force an outcome, right? Exactly what the thugs do. You can't fight fire with fire thinking you can win when the fire that you're fighting is a bushfire and you've got a tiny little match. What's that going to do, right? Think about it. So here it is. This is fighting a bushfire with a little match in your hand.
I need to go. I have to be somewhere. Sorry. No! You do not have jurisdiction over me. I am global federal jurisdiction. Right there, my friend. Right there. Global federal jurisdiction.
You see how much attention he's paying to what he's saying about his so-called jurisdiction? He could say whatever he likes right now. You know what I mean? And he's not learning, right? He's not going, actually, this isn't working. Why don't I just save it? And if I'm so good at beating him in the courts, in these fake courts, which no one can really, all he can do is get a stay of execution at best, and they just kick the can down the road. Then why not just leave it there? No. It's got to make sure that he's the winner here. That's the problem, right? If you go in with these thugs thinking that you can get a win, you make life hell for yourself. If that is your intention, you are always going to be embroiled in pain and suffering. And people haven't learned that yet, so these are more lessons for people to learn.
We are the ones serving you notice. I have already served the New South Wales Police Force notice, judicial notice. They have been acquiescent to all the questions I have propounded.
And how much has changed with all those serving of notices, right? If you're the only one doing it, especially if it's based in lies, it's going to be useless. It requires an army, a martyr of people, right? Where they know there's a shifting of tide of consciousness, then it'll start mattering. But if you're going to base it on these fantasies, right, that someone's invented, that's got nothing to do with what's verifiable and discoverable, It's totally useless. And they laugh at you and go, I keep doing that. We will just make a fool. We'll just make an example out of you. That's all we'll do. And that's what happens.
A to Z of questions, which will be brought up. An A to Z of questions. They could not confirm their jurisdiction nor their authority. Okay, I know exactly what I'm talking about because I study this stuff for many years. You don't have jurisdiction over me, sir. I am going. Thank you. Have a good day.
Now, what we don't see is we don't see what happens next because it cuts out.
No, there's no Mr. Glenn Short here. You are talking a legal fiction name.
So that's what we don't get to see, right? Now I'm going to show you the difference between what happens when you hold them their feet to the fire immediately, straight away.
Identify yourself.
Police station.
So that's
exactly right. What's your name, sir?
what's your name?
And you're a sovereign citizen, sir, are you?
So you making accusations, are you?
No, I'm not making accusations. I'm here to serve some court
So
documents.
let's just see if you're standing under your oath of office of constable today.
Pardon me?
Are you standing under your oath of office of constable?
Which is what?
You don't know what that is? Are you a public servant?
Of course I'm a public servant.
Okay, so a public servant needs to stand under the oath of office of constable. Is that you?
If
Are you standing under your oath of office of
I am,
constable?
yes.
You are? Perfect. Let's see. We're about to find out.
Happy
Here we
days.
go.
Happy
Here we
days.
go. Where are you going? Stay here.
I'm not here to answer any of your questions.
No, you're not going to answer it. You're actually going to be on camera,
Well, sir,
walking away,
thank you.
walking away, proving you're not a holder of constable, that you're actually a private
Sovereign
corporate
citizen, sir.
policy enforcement agent.
We'll get these served by the courts.
I must caution you where I stand under Article 60. Where are you going?
Now that was meant to be Article 61. Now I'm going to show you what that's about, right? So we're just going to go down here, the second part here that says the reasons for this simple and pure. All right. Actually, no, I might go up here because we need to make some definitions of what a judge is when it's written in this way. It's actually meaning convener, right? So we're just going to go into the correct structure. That's any country that's part of the English Commonwealth, right? There's a particular structure that was put in place that recognizes that no one is better than anyone else, doesn't matter what position you hold, and we are all equally accountable under one law, right? And that is the laws of morality. Right? That's what that is all about, right? It's very easy. Anyone who's got, like no knowledge of anything else can understand that we're all equal under the law. That's not a hard concept for people to get, right? So it says here, is distinguished from any officials appointed to their positions by government or monarch, right? So if you're running a system of service, you can appoint other people to act in your name if you're the one who's at the top of the tree, right? And so they have titles, right? And it says, we're up to at common law, only locally chosen, right? So the real way it's meant to be done, any matters to do with law, it's got to be people that are chosen from within the community. They can't be appointed by government. That's the correct way. So they're people like conveners. Now the job of the convener was subverted and made into a judge, where they took the role of the jury and they gave that all to one individual. So they turned them from a convener into the judge who gets to judge on all matters now. Right. Usually local bailiffs, stewards, aldermen, sheriffs, or others can convene trials by jury. That's the only system of law that was ever meant to be in place. That's the only system that was ever agreed to when there was the idea that you could form a nation state. There was no other system, right? That's it. And if you don't use it, you're going to be doing what this guy did, and keeps doing, should I say. At common law, no conveners who are now duplicitously, it's a hard word to say, duplicitously referred to as judges, have no judicial function whatsoever, and are or should be elected regularly by the people, never appointed by government. It's critical knowledge here, guys. You go into their fake courts, you are granting authority to a system that is totally criminal, right? Because you cannot have a judge. As soon as you walk in and try and fight them on their system, you've lost already, right? Unless there's one probably way you could get around it, but that's for another day. It's not for this video. The reasons for this, and so here it says, so Book 4 of Blackstone's analysis of laws of England. Now, the legal system grabs from Blackstone, right? So what they do is they cherry pick the parts they want to make sure that the system they invented looks legit, and they ignore the things that are actually to do with the real system of law. And it also quotes Sir Geoffrey Gilbert's history of the common law pleas, right? The reasons for this are simple and pure regarding convening officers, judges. So you see, they've used the word judges, but it's meant to be just a convening officer. Just make sure there's a clear distinction of when you say that word judge, it means a convening officer, right? Someone who just convenes people to come together. At trials, impartiality and integrity cannot be obtained, nor realistically even expected, from the people who enforce the laws, who are selected. When I say laws, it's meant to be legislation, who are selected by those who also make and maintain the legislation, even though it says laws, it's meant to be legislation. At the common law of the land, whether in civil or criminal cases, all officers who convene trials are chosen, elected by the people. So we're not running any kind of common law system, right? So anyone who says they can invoke common law while they walk in these fake courts has no idea what they're talking about, right? It's not just going to happen, right? It has to be the people who understand the system to demand it. And that means the bulk of them, not just a few, the bulk of people. According to common law, all conveners, justices, judges, right? So make sure you understand that when that word judge here, it means a convener, are themselves subject to common law. That's why that word Article 61 was invoked. You just didn't hear it said to the end, it was cut off. And are answerable to the common law and tribunals of the people, which the people run, i.e. the trial by jury, and are categorically not protected by elite privilege nor impeachable by government and legislature. Really understand that, guys? That's why we use the 1215 Magna Carta, because that's the correct setup. That is in place today. That is how the whole system that they're running, the criminal structure, comes apart, because you need to be able to show the correct standard that they've subverted, which they cannot deny. It's impossible. And if you don't use it, you are still going to remain trapped. So it's really fundamental that people understand this as to why we do it this way and no other. If you want to have a different system afterwards, that's fine. But first, you need to hold their feet to the fire by that which is actually provable, that they can't get out of or weasel out of. You need to get that part done first before you can start doing other things. So it's crawling before you can walk, guys. This is the going back to crawling, back to the fundamentals. But that's what this is about. And at the bottom, as you can see, government-appointed judges may not judge in the government's cause. That is a crime. That is dictatorship. That's despotism. As soon as you have that happening, that's what it is. Very few people understand that principle, right? Because if you've got your own people, it's like a mafia family, right? Deciding on what the truth is, there's no truth. They're just going to do, what benefits their little cult. They're always going to do that, right? And as you can see here, again here, elite privilege nor impeachable by government and legislature, they're just the legislative branch of public servants. They can't dictate how anything goes in matters of law. They're just one aspect of public service. That's it. That's what needs to be understood, guys. And that's why we use the Magna Carta. That's why we use Article 61, because it's been invoked since 2001. It's the highest law in this entire structure where there's anyone who takes an oath. That's what this is all about. Whether you're police, military, MP, right, public servant of any description, right, all judicial officer, it all comes down to that one system. And if you don't use it, then you will be continually be administered as a slave. And it takes more than one to use it. It needs to be the weight of numbers. I'm hoping that's starting to get clear now.